Welcome to Module 4, Section 3, Storytelling, Story Acting. Storytelling, story acting is a component of the Focus on Pre-K curriculum where children dictate stories, which the teacher writes down, and their stories are then later acted out in collaboration with their peers. There are numerous benefits to children for engaging in storytelling and story acting. It helps to support vocabulary development because children are listening to and using words in authentic ways as they create and tell their stories. Children might ask what certain words mean when stories are read back. Teachers can suggest to children as they're telling their stories to use more precise or more specific vocabulary. It's been shown that children who do storytelling and story acting consistently in the classroom score higher than their peers on the Peabody Picture Vocabulary Test. Storytelling and story acting helps children practice and develop their understanding of narrative structure, helps them begin to make more sense of the fact that stories often have a beginning, a middle, an end, that stories have plots, that stories have characters, that stories have settings. It's been demonstrated that 4-year-olds with more advanced narrative skills become stronger readers in 4th grade and then in 8th grade. Storytelling and story acting also helps support children's print awareness. As the teacher is writing down the children's stories, the children are able to notice that the teacher is writing from left to right and that she's moving down the page from top to bottom as she transcribes the children's words. Children observe print being used for meaningful purposes, which motivates themselves to then engage in more writing activities. Storytelling and story acting also supports children's social emotional growth. It develops their confidence, it helps to create a sense of belonging and social connection in the classroom, and it helps to promote self-regulation. In story acting, when children are acting out the stories together as a group, children need to learn how to take turns and follow rules in order to participate appropriately. In the Focus on Pre-K weekly plans, you can see that it is recommended for storytelling to happen at the beginning of the day as children arrive at school, and for story acting to take place at the end of the day as a way of transitioning out of school. This is certainly not the only time when storytelling and story acting can occur. Sometimes teachers will collect children's stories during centers, and story acting can occur at various points during the day. Choose what works best for your schedule. In the Focus on Pre-K weekly plans, you can see that it is recommended for storytelling to happen at the beginning of the day as children arrive at school, and for story acting to take place at the end of the day as a way of transitioning out of school. This is certainly not the only time when storytelling and story acting can occur. Sometimes teachers will collect children's stories during centers, and story acting can occur at various points during the day. Choose what works best for your schedule. In this schedule, story acting happens daily just before the children go down for nap. So as you can see, as was mentioned in the last slide, there's flexibility in when storytelling and story acting might happen in your particular classroom schedule. There are 5 components of storytelling and story acting. There's dictation, dramatization, adults telling and modeling stories, communication, and family engagement. In the next few slides, we will go into more detail about each of these components. It's important to keep in mind that at the beginning of the year, storytelling and story acting is going to most likely be something new and novel for children in your classroom, something that they have not experienced before. So they are going to need repeated practice, consistent practice. Having adults model and tell stories can be valuable as well to show children what storytelling can look like, to allow them to hear what storytelling can sound like. Working with small groups of children To give them opportunities to tell stories and act out stories before moving to a whole group situation can also be beneficial. During dictation, the teacher should sit next to, beside the child and tell child that they can dictate a story to the teacher and that the story can be as long as one page, but no longer. This serves to limit the length of the story, which is important for a few reasons. It can be difficult as the teacher to write down and keep track of a very lengthy story. And later on, when it comes to story acting, it can be challenging for children to act out a long story as well. If children do wish to tell a longer story, when they reach the bottom of the page, you could tell them that they could continue their story when it's their next storytelling turn. Be sure to have the child sit next to you, again, to promote the child's awareness of concepts of print, so that the child can follow along as you write down her story and see you writing from left to right and from top to bottom on the page. When the child is done, read the story back to the child and ask her if there is anything that he or she would like to change. There's a wide range and variety of stories that can differ greatly from 3 years old to 5 years old. When children are 3 years old, they will often tell stories that are called leapfrog stories, where there is a series of events that in the child's mind are connected and that make sense, but to the listener might appear to be random or disconnected. One event might not have anything apparently to do with the next and with the next and with the next. When children turn 4 years old, they do more of telling what are sometimes called chronologies. And these are stories that don't really have a well crafted or articulated beginning or end. And stories that feature a lot of and then, and then, and then. Something like, my mommy woke me up, and then we had breakfast, and then I got dressed, and then I went downstairs, and then I watched TV, and then I went down for a nap, and then I woke up, and then my daddy came home, and then my daddy gave me a hug. Something like that might be an example of a chronology type of story. And when children are 5 years old, they will often engage in telling what might be considered a more classic kind of a narrative, a story that features a beginning, a middle, and an end, with well-defined characters who face some kind of a problem or a situation that needs to be resolved. Some children will begin the year very confident in their storytelling abilities. Other children will have trouble getting started. Teachers should aim to provide just enough support through scaffolding to aid children's development while not taking away their ownership of the story. Visual prompts such as these can help jumpstart children's thinking about characters and settings for their stories. Story acting is usually a whole group activity. Begin by marking out a stage on the carpet where the group is gathered, or in whatever area of the classroom where the group happens to be gathered. Oftentimes, teachers will use blue painter's tape on the carpet to mark out a rectangle where the stage or the acting will be. The teacher should read the title and the first few words of the story, and as characters appear in the story, move around the circle from child to child and ask the next child if he or she would like to be this new character. If the child agrees, the child can get up and act out the role of that particular character. Remember that some children will be more engaged and interested and wanting to participate, and that participating should be optional. It should not be something that children are required or forced to do. Continue reading the story, and when the next new character appears in the story, ask the next child in the circle if he or she would like to be that character, etc. As you move around the circle telling the story, introducing new characters, teachers should help children understand and follow two important stage rules for the dramatization or the acting out of stories. One, if there's any pretend fighting, the Children acting out those particular characters should stay at the very least one arm or leg's length from one another so that there's no actual physical encountering. And two, during the story acting piece of things, all of the children who are acting out various roles should stay on the stage. As was mentioned earlier, adult storytelling provides models for children to draw on for their own storytelling. These adult models give children ideas about how to organize and structure their stories, what kinds of characters to include, and what plots to describe. Hearing an adult tell stories inspires children to tell their own stories. There are three kinds of stories in particular that are great for sharing with young children. Personal experiences. Children love to hear stories about the lives of their teachers or other valued adults. Folk tales, such as The Three Billy Goats Gruff or Abba Yo-Yo, are excellent stories to be told orally. And imaginary tales that the teacher creates are also wonderful to share with children. After stories have been told and acted out, teachers should provide additional opportunities for children to communicate their ideas through different media. How stories are communicated depends on classroom circumstances. Teachers can print out the texts of stories and have a child illustrate a page the next day, or wait until the end of a round of storytelling and have the class illustrate their stories during a whole group time. These pages might be displayed on a bulletin board, put into a binder of classroom stories that might be kept in the classroom library to be read by teachers or children or visitors to the classroom, or placed in individual portfolios. Curly K1 teacher Laura Shea stores her children's portfolios in the writing area for easy access. After stories have been told and acted out, teachers can provide additional opportunities for children to communicate their ideas through different media. How stories are communicated depends on classroom circumstances. Teachers can print out the texts of stories and have children illustrate a page the next day, or wait until the end of a round of storytelling and have the class illustrate their stories during a whole group time. These pages may be displayed on a bulletin board, put into an ever-growing binder of classroom stories that are read by teachers and children and visitors to the classroom, or placed in individual portfolios. Sometimes these binders or portfolios are kept in the classroom library, or as in the example here from K1 teacher Laura Shea at the Curly School, stories might be stored in portfolios or binders in the writing area for easy access. As children's first teachers, families can support children's learning through storytelling in multiple ways. It's helpful for teachers to explain to families how stories support children's success in school by increasing attention spans, enlarging vocabulary, learning about sequences of events, etc. Families can learn of the benefits of storytelling in a variety of ways. There are articles on the Focus on Pre-K website that can be distributed to parents and families to support their understanding. Also, newsletters can be a way of explaining how storytelling works in your classroom. On the left of this slide, you can see an example of a newsletter from Megan Nason's classroom, where she communicated to parents about how storytelling worked in her room with her students. Teachers at the Blackstone Elementary School organized a family storytelling event that had two parts. First, parents attended a 45-minute workshop where teachers talked about and explained the importance of storytelling, and where parents had an opportunity to learn ways that they could support their children's stories, including suggestions to parents for telling their own stories. And then at the end of the workshop, families broke out into classroom groups and wrote a short story to share with their children. The parents then went to their children's classrooms where they listened to their children tell stories. And then they shared the story that they had written with the children. Though the workshops were held during the school day, attendance was very high. Teachers made posters and placed them around the school, and sent home a bilingual flyer and an invitation, which you can see on the slide here, that were decorated by the children. And the day before the event, children were sent home wearing bracelet reminders to help their parents and families remember to come to the storytelling and story acting workshop. Please take a few minutes now to watch the two videos that are part of this section of the Module 4. There's a video on storytelling, and there's a video on story acting. Make sure that you also complete the check for understanding.